My parents insist I must give my house to my brother, because I'm single and he has a family. I am a single man in my early 30s, currently facing appalling behavior from my parents and brother. My brother is 29, and he's already got 4 kids now. He had his first at 22, and the second followed a year later, then the third 2 years after that, and the fourth is the most recently born, a couple of months ago. My sister-in-law, Sil, and I do not get along, as she always likes to try and get a rise out of me by acting superior. Then she turns into an extreme self-victimizing drama queen if I retaliate against her in any way. I describe her manners, saying, she can cry in an instant and can put on an extremely convincing show to get sympathy from just about anyone. My parents and brother absolutely adore her, even though they know exactly how she really is and just don't care. She's very good looking, I'll give her that, but she's so awful that I could never be attracted to her. She also refuses to get any sort of job, even though she has a college degree, and my mother willingly helps with the kids all day. So my brother's family finances are entirely dependent on him. This also means they can't afford to live anywhere but our parents' house. And privacy is a bit of an issue with all of them under one roof in a 3-bedroom house that was built in the 60s. Growing up, my younger brother was also the obvious favorite. We're 3 years apart in age, but he developed a superiority complex because I was badly punished if I retaliated against his antics in any way back then. It was obvious that our parents cared for him a lot more because he got the lion's share of everything unless people called them out on it, which did happen a fair bit by other family members. This is why our parents packed us all up and moved us about 150 miles away from them, so we generally only saw them on holidays, since it was a 3-hour drive. My brother got physically violent towards me on a number of occasions, flirted relentlessly with my first girlfriend to the point she broke up with me, and laughed at any misfortune I had. And our parents just told me to suck it up whenever I was upset about it. I only got equal treatment when our parents wanted to keep up appearances. I admit it was rather funny to see the looks on their faces whenever they had to treat me equal to my brother on birthdays and Christmas because other people were present. We had relatives that were very nosy and loved gossiping drama. So my parents did their best to hide what was really going on and threatened to take all my stuff away if I didn't keep my mouth shut. If anything, it just made my parents celebrate more when I turned 18 and moved out because it meant they no longer had to provide for me. I wasn't even done with high school yet when I moved out, but couch surfing was far better for me than living with our parents. I was low contact ever since leaving home. They didn't even show up for my high school graduation. From that point on, I would usually only see my parents and brother on holidays, like the rest of the family. Due to the loss of my job and tough financial situation, I appeared to be homeless. I wrote, I own a truck simply for the fact that I've always loved trucks, so I found a $1,000 camper in good shape and put it on my truck just so I could live out of it for a while. It was supposed to be temporary, but I ended up living out of it far longer than I ever thought. I originally was hoping to be able to live out of the camper at my parents' house, where my brother and his family still reside as well. My parents weren't going to support me in those hard times, I explained, but when I asked my parents to let me stay for a while, they told me they had a full house and didn't want me there. Plus, we hadn't exactly gotten along in the past decade. They said they'd only agree to let me park my camper there if I paid them basically what it'd cost to rent an apartment in my area. That was way too much just to park my camper. I was jobless and trying to save as much of my unemployment money as I could till I could find a new job. I may as well be living in an apartment with that rent price they were asking. My parents called my camper an eyesore and told me to take a hike since we couldn't come to an agreement. And Sil thought it was absolutely hilarious I had to live in a camper. My brother joined her in pointing at and mocking me while calling me names. After a long time of living in a camper, I was finally able to get a better job, a higher payment, and could afford to buy a house. I revealed, I looked around for something close to my work, and just 2 miles away found a 3-bedroom manufactured home on a small property. But I managed to get it for $10,000 less than the asking price somehow. I used nearly my entire savings for a down payment and got approved for a home loan. I finally didn't have to live in a camper anymore. There was enough space for me to back my truck in behind the house to take the camper off to set it up in the backyard. So I put it there as its own little building, just in case I want to use it again. And from then on, I started to witness a real fight for my property, arranged by my parents and my brother. When I was fully settled in the house, I was dumb enough to brag about it on Facebook. My family saw the post, and that's where this really starts. After a few weeks, my parents and brother along with his family came to visit completely unannounced to have a tour of my home. I didn't even give them my address. So how they found out where I live, I still don't know. None of my friends have fessed up, and no prior family members visited me before that. So I wonder if they stalked me at work and followed me home or something. It really wouldn't surprise me. Once I opened the door, they practically all shoved their way in like rambunctious tourists, then just started making themselves at home. They all kept poking around and Sil had this creepy smirk that she was repeatedly flashing me. And it was only later that I figured out why. And it made me madder than a bull on steroids that just got stung by a hornet. My parents were constantly talking about how I've got so much extra space now, and it's too much for someone like me who has no wife or kids. Sure, not now, but maybe someday. And my brother kept remarking about how there was more space than our parents' house, and my house was closer to his job too. I came home later that week on Friday evening to find a moving truck and my brother's minivan parked in my driveway. It was Dan and his family there moving stuff in. He just waved to me with a grin when I saw him. I was furious and told him and the rest of his family to stop. But Sil smugly said to me that like it or not, they were moving in. And then in the most fake way while tilting her head and puckering her lips, she said that it was okay because my mommy allowed it. And I should always listen to what my mommy tells me. I seethed with rage just hearing those words and looking at her face. So I locked myself in my truck to call the cops right away. When they realized what I was doing, Sil started pounding on my window and yelling at me to stop, and that I can't do this to her because she and Dan need the house. My whole family is convinced that I must give my house to my brother now. My Sil cried, "Why can't you just do this for Dan?" I responded with, "Why, Dan? It's my house, not his." Then she threatened to key the side of my truck unless I stopped calling the police, all of which the 911 operator heard, thanks to the window being slightly open. I told Sil if she damaged my truck, I'd sue her, and she was smart enough to retreat. After the police were called, they all were angry and tried to guilt me. I made them leave and publicly exposed my parents, and now the entire rest of the family is on my side, and my parents are utterly destroyed about it.